me, Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS, here with another Random Thoughts podcast. This one a shorter one, and it's also serving as a review of Power of the Doctor, the final Chibnall Jodie era episode. It's a 2-hour special. Going to just kind of give my general thoughts on it, what I liked, what I didn't like, and full disclosure, going into this, I am not a fan of this era of Doctor Who. I'm not a fan of this era of Doctor Who in the slightest. I didn't like it. I'm sorry, I didn't. I am someone who gave it a fair shot, and I am willing to point out the positive when I see the positive, how very rare that is. I don't ever go into an episode wanting to hate it. I keep waiting and hoping that some part of the show will turn me around. I didn't like Matt Smith's Doctor at first. I didn't like Peter Capaldi at first. Both of them turned out to be phenomenal doctors, and I was putting this when they left. Even up to the last end, I was pretty sure after, with the Flux, I was like, there were bits of it that was good, but then the Timeless Child was wrapped into it again, and I'm like, and there were some hokey things. And then the Sea Devils special, I didn't even do a video on that. That was just laughably bad. But this is a mixed bag. There is a ton of classic Who fan service. And Chibnall's era has been devoid of fan service. In fact, until the Flux, when we started getting, Santarans and Weeping Angels and all, like all of a sudden, like at the end of his run, after he's completely alienated the fans, he's been throwing fan service. And what's interesting is a lot of his fan service, to me, says he's not a fan of New Who, or as it's called, or the reboot continuation that came out in the mid 2000s to now. That he is not like that because he doesn't reference that stuff. He does go back and reference stuff from the classic era, the stuff that he grew up with as a kid, and he kind of almost was like, I don't like how Russell T Davies and Moffat modernized these characters. I'm going to modernize it myself, maybe refer back to some of their stuff, but then do it kind of my own take, and which makes the show very disjointed. But Doctor Who, over the years, like the Cybermen have always changed appearance and stuff, the Daleks and stuff, but he's had a very weird take on a lot of this stuff. And admittedly, like the big discussion around it is just the fact that he hired a bunch of writers who had no experience in sci-fi, don't like sci-fi, and were more concerned with how this could be a tool for the messaging, which Doctor Who has always had messaging, but here you're putting the messaging is being blunt, and it's treating the fan base like they are needing to be spanked, so to speak. Instead of making it part of the epic story, and we're all celebrating this stuff together, it feels like the plot is just nonsense. It's backstage. We didn't know how to write a sci-fi plot. We just said, oh yeah, it's explosions and beam me ups and weird wacky alien something there. But the plot, there's something. Yeah, there's some disaster or something. Maybe we'll forget about that. We won't do that. It's kind of how it's been, and that's really turned off longtime fans, and just this idea that Doctor Who needed to be fixed. It didn't need to be fixed. Were there things in Doctor Who that were a product of its time? Yes, but I would say even people like me point out stuff about the first Doctor being more chauvinistic. I think he was a gentleman in a lot of ways, and they pick out like a line that he said to his granddaughter. It was his granddaughter who he was disciplining. He wasn't randomly going around and uh, threatening women in a controlling way. That was him talking to a young adult, a young child, a teenager who was still in school age under his care. Uh, what parent hasn't been strict and talked to their teenager that way? And then his, you know, he never really put women down, but he always, even being the old feeble man, like if there was danger, he was the gentleman. He was a like, me and Ian need to go out, you guys. But anyway, getting lost in a lot of the thick of this. Doctor Who has always been very progressive. Right from the beginning, it has had powerful women in the lead role, powerful female characters from the first episode. Barbara, I love Barbara. Barbara is so strong-willed right there. Her and Ian are some of my favorite companions of all time, and they were there right in episode 1. So, that just felt the need to put that out there. But that said, I had no problem with the Doctor being female. I didn't feel it was necessary, and I felt like they needed to understand what they were asking, because we had 12 doctors who were all male. To randomly now have the Doctor do that, it's interesting to see the community that is so, you shouldn't tell somebody what to identify as and all that, are demanding that the Doctor identify as female, when clearly this fictional character has been shown to have had the preference of male. So in that point, it's almost like people are demanding that he be a gender that he is not. I find that a little bit ironic. However, I think it is something they could have pulled off. They did it with the Master when they turned the Master into Missy. And it was amazing and Michelle Gomez recently did an interview where they asked her if she was worried. And she said she wasn't really worried. And she said, fans safeguard property, and that's a good thing. They are precious. And so she knew, like, initially when it was announced, or when, she knew that there was going to be a little bit of backlash at first, that fans were going to be like, no, you can't do that. But she said if she gave her ultimate to the role, and she did it well, she knew the fans would accept it. But she understood the need, the feeling to be protective. And she didn't take it for granted that they should just accept this. And she hoped that she was a stepping stone to a female Doctor. And it is something that the show has toyed with, the idea way back in the classic days, when showrunners wanted to do it, but TV networks didn't. So like I said, I think it could work, but I think they would have needed to come out the door with the most Doctor. And I'm going to do an episode by episode breakdown of all of this whole era coming up here probably before the end of the year, because 2023, we're going to be talking about that new stuff. Maybe I'll do a season by season, but right now I'm just going to focus on the power of the Doctor, and from here out, we are going to have spoilers. So this is your final warning. Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Okay. Power of the Doctor. What do I think of it? I think it is comparable to the book of Boba Fett. That is my hot take. This is very much gave me the vibe of the book of Boba Fett. Why do I say that? In the book of Boba Fett, you had Black Chrysanthemum, who was a comic book character. You had Cobb Vanth, which was a book character. You had Cad Bane, which was a Clone Wars animated cartoon character. Fennec Shan, which was a new Bad Batch cartoon character that had appeared in The Mandalorian, so this is your new kind of character. You have Boba Fett is the main star of the show, but he is actually probably the worst part of the show. You have returning or interesting villains in the Pike Syndicate. So you have like all of these elements that are like coming together, and then you have guest stars of like Luke Skywalker, Mandalorian, Baby Yoda, Ahsoka, all coming in and taking the spotlight and being like the, ooh, look at the shiny thing there, ooh, look at the reference there, ooh, look at that, they're pulling in this, oh, that's so cool that they brought that into this, and you're happy about that. But then you have stuff like the Mod Squad that on their Vespas, and the effects were just really, really bad. And the plot of, you know, your Boba Fett becoming a crime lord, but he doesn't really commit crime. Like the whole premise of the show and the Tusken Ranger, like it didn't all match up or line up. So that's how I feel about the Power of the Doctor. You come in this has a huge problem of 3 seasons of a show that did not land. So right there, you have that, and you have the negativity of the timeless child, a concept that completely destroys canon. I do like, probably of this era though, the thing I like the most is Sean Dawson as the Master. He is my favorite of the New Who Masters. I do love Missy. They're almost on par. He's just a little bit above. But I'll take the episodes with Missy over that, like, because he's in. Other than Skyfall and this, I got nothing because I can't rewatch that Timeless Doctor stuff. That it was just so bad, and it upset me. So I am glad this is something that there is enough little things in this that I may actually watch this again in the future. We're going to get into some of those Easter eggs, those nostalgia memory berries things. But here's the long and the short of it. The Master is created this master plan, and he's pulled in the Cybermen, which are now the Cyber Masters, because of the Time Lords turn into Cybermen under the Master's control, and the Daleks, and said, hey, these combined people together, we all hate you. And we've agreed, even though in the past it's been canon, that these parties will not work together. They're saying, we're going to work together to defeat you. Granted, they showed a similar thing with the Pandorica, so I guess there's precedence for this. But it did feel like a little bit of a weird alliance. But they have a very elaborate plan when constantly, and this is one of the problems with villains like the Daleks, when there's like Daleks everywhere and they've got like this whole huge complicated plan to defeat the Doctor. Why is the plan not, 30 Daleks shoot the Doctor at once? We'll never know, because then there wouldn't be a show. It's not how Doctor Who works. To some extent, that is something that I should forgive this, because I forgive that of all the other episodes of previous Doctor Who before Chibnall era. But there's something about Chibnall's era that's already rubbing me the wrong way, so now I'm more critical of everything. But at one time period, the Daleks are creating volcanoes that are going to erupt all over the planet. Another time period, the Cybermen have created an additional planet that's been cyber converted. That was kind of a weird thing. Very techno-virus thing that was never part of their power set, but okay. The Master's given that, and then the Master's going to be running between these times and another time and stealing paintings, stealing seismologists, taking over Russia and taking over the identity of Rasputin. very weird, convoluted plot. And the Master's big plan is he's, as I said, the very clickbait thing. He is going to erase this version of the Doctor from history. And he's going to force the Doctor to regenerate. A callback to the second Doctor, when that happened to him to become the third Doctor. He was going to force that regeneration. And what does he do? He takes his body and forces her to regenerate him into her body. So he basically leaves his body as a dead husk, and he puts himself in her body. Now, at first, I thought they were going to switch places. That she was going to be in his body, and he was going to be in her body, and Jodie Whittaker was going to have to play the Master, and the Master was going to have to play the Doctor. Or the actors. Sean Astin was going to have to play the Doctor, and the whole idea was he was going to go around and do a bunch of bad things in the name of the Doctor, but that's not what he did. He basically let his body die, put his consciousness into hers, trying to erase her consciousness from existence. That seems like a very dumb plan. He could have just stayed in his body and killed her. Because then he was all excited about how he was going to be the Doctor. And he was putting on like bits and pieces of clothes of all the... He's playing the second Doctor's recorder. He had the celery. He had Seven's shirt. I believe different... he had Four's scarf and a different Doctor's... Even though he had the celery on it, was a different Doctor's coat. So it was just like this hodgepodge of a whole bunch of different dogs. Oh, it was Jodie's coat, but with the celery, with Seven's sweater. I'm trying to think if he referenced any of the New Who. I don't think he really did. But he's putting all of this stuff on, and he's kind of like, I'm the Doctor, because he's in the Doctor's body. But he could have just killed the Doctor and done that in his own body. And it made Jodie morph into him. So it was like him, but they made his like face look like him, but almost a little more girlish. It was a weird, really weird take. And then he was all like, yes, let's go on adventures. I can be fun too. It's a different kind of fun because I'm going to kill people, but it'll be fun. We're going to cause mischief. All in the name of the Doctor. It was... Here's what I'm talking about. This is like Boba Fett. It's the storyline. The whole premise of the story is a little bit bonkers, a little bit out there. Doesn't really make sense. So, production value. Yes, it's way up on a lot of things. I will say, though, when they go into the TARDIS, and the TARDIS is this very cheapo-looking TARDIS that looks like a giant toy. Everything looks so plastic. You know, like it's supposed to be like these glowing tree-like, glowing see-through tree crystal things. They just look so plastic, so cheap compared to the past couple of TARDISes. This is by far one of the worst. It is the worst TARDIS design ever. Just like unimaginably bad design of the TARDIS. So when they swap back from the impressive visuals and special effects of that, it's jarring. And the whole thing opens up with like an exciting thing on a train, and the Doctor's coming. It felt very green screen. And say what you will about how funky Doctor Who graphics are, because Doctor Who, I mean, it's got some laughable. It's from the early '60s, pre-Star Trek. Like, this is some bad hokey stuff. But I mean, when you wrap a guy in green bubble wrap and say he's an alien, it's laughable. But it's always practical. even New Who, when they got CGI and all of that, there was so much done practical, and it never felt like the Doctor standing in front of a green screen. The whole like Cybermen on the train, it just felt off. Like you could feel the cutout around Jodie. Uh, it was so green screen. So it was like, yeah, the budget's way out there, and they're doing all these amazing special effects, but it felt so much like like uh, Star Wars prequels. Big budget to be sure, but for television, but at the same time, still bad. And then you go to the TARDIS, which is just this laughable, dinky set that looks like a TARDIS that they sold for you to have like a little play kit. It feels like they're filming that, and it's all cheap plastic, not an actual legitimate BBC set. Um, so so we've talked about what the weird plot was. Let's talk about something positive. So the Doctor goes into, and this is something interesting they added to canon, that before they pass over, that you go into kind of like this void space in the thing, and you have some of your past selves are there to greet you, and on the vestige of crossing over uh, into the regeneration, that like somehow deep inside the subconscious or whatever, they're always there, and they live there, and there's almost like a passing over. It was kind of an interesting concept. It was definitely sci-fi, definitely something I could see in Doctor Who, and it allowed them to bring back past Doctors, but because these aren't necessarily supposed to be them from their timeline, they just had them live action as they look now. And it was cool. They had the person that they had recast in Twice Upon a Time as the first Doctor. They had the fifth Doctor, the sixth Doctor, the seventh Doctor, and the eighth Doctor. And that was really cool. Unfortunately, say Paul McGann finally is starting to show his age a little bit, or it's the weird way. Once again, it looked like he was on a Zoom call. The like the hair like kind of does the thing like you get when you're on a Zoom call. I was not a fan of that. But it was great to see him in this. It was great to see all of them. It was an interesting take. Now, apparently, they couldn't get the fourth. They couldn't get Tom Baker. Tom Baker, they said that they had scheduling issues. Now, this thing has been in development for a long time. I can't imagine that months went by and Tom Baker was completely unavailable, unless he is having significant health problems. But he's done a recent Big Finish audio drama. I seriously, if it was that they weren't willing to come to his house and set up a green screen and film him, I'd be very disappointed that they wouldn't go to the effort to do that. But more than likely, either his health has deteriorated or he just didn't want to do it, which could very well be. But like most actors, Tom's very progressive, and I don't think he's had any problem with Jodie. All the other previous doctors seem to very much well praise her, and Chibnall, and how much of that is just saving face with the public, or how much is how they feel, I don't know. But so I don't want to read any malintent on his part. It could be, and I also hope that he's in decent health, but he is getting up there in age. But to say he was busy, I don't know. There are more circumstances than, he's not like a working actor out there constantly with things. Like, he might have had some family things going on or something, but it's either his health has got him to a point where he can't perform this. We saw how old he looked in the 50th, and the guy's getting up there. But at the same time, we got the guy who played Ian Chesterton in here, who, is in his 90s and, was in Doctor Who over a decade before, the Fourth Doctor came on the scene. So, you know, that's spoilers because something I'm going to talk about later. So, okay. So we have that. Now we have the Master, and there's a moment where he decides he's going to gloat, and he does a dance. The Rasputin dance, it's thing right now. And I had a brief little chuckle because the Dalek looks over to the Cyberman like, are we really working with this idiot type look? But I was like, this went a little too far. Like, I really like this Master, but it was kind of like a little bit killed the momentum of the episode. Reminded me in Sonic Movie 2 of like the dance scene in the tavern there in Russia. It was just like, it was funny, but it kind of killed the momentum you were building up to. Now, another thing that I love in this, so we have Kate Stewart has recruited 4 more companions to work for UNIT. Now, I will say the fact that we didn't get my mind's blanking. This is going to bug me that I couldn't think of it, but the one who had the sister who was a Zygon, that they... I hate this. I could have told you this 10 minutes before I hit record, but all of a sudden I can't. But anyways, she's like a Doctor Who super fan that works for UNIT. She didn't show up. I would have loved her to be in this. But Kate Stewart's in that, and I love the character of Kate Stewart, bringing on the legacy of the Brigadier through his daughter. But we see Ace and Tegan. I really love these two, I especially loved Ace. Ace and Tegan had some issues to work through about how their runs ended with the Doctor. And they were a little bit bitter. Ace was more sad about it, but had accepted it. Tegan was bitter. And Jodie's Doctor was kind of like, ooh, yeah, I don't want to talk to you because I ghosted. It did not have the same level of emotion as when Sarah Jane Smith met up with the 10th Doctor. That was just so heartwarming. This was not. So we see them going on missions, but then we have a situation where they're like in there and they realize that like Tegan's like, the Doctor sent me an invite and he sent me this little like toy nestling doll of a Cyberman. And then it reveals that they've locked the Master up, they've got him trapped, and he goes, Doctor didn't send you that. I did. And I knew how stupid you'd be because you're so attached to your Doctor that you would bring it into to Unit HQ, and the thing about miniaturizing is you can maximize it again. And so he does that. And then he says, but the fun thing is this one's a nesting doll. Opens up and a whole bunch of Cybermen come out, including the Cyberman with emotions that has a half-broken mask. I really don't like that character. Having a Cyberman with emotions completely ruins the concept of the Cybermen, of being, they're cruel because they're emotionless machines. The moment they have emotions, they are no longer Cybermen. They should be turning to the side of good. But anyways, they're going through, we're getting to see them, and there's a moment when they have, like, Tegan pulls out her jacket and her bat, her Dalek bashing bat, and it's like, okay, I'll get the Daleks, you help Kate, and it's like, okay, well, here, take this parachute and base jump off the building. We're going to lock the building down. Tegan, you go down in the basement and hit the self-destruct. We'll destroy all the Cybermen in here with us. And Kate's like, I'll buy you time. I'll hold them off, and just when I think they're about to call my bluff, I will surrender to them to go take me to processing, and hopefully in all that time they won't realize that you're trying to blow the building up. Now, here we have Yaz having just this crisis. The doctor is dead, and the hologram appears. We had seen the hologram appear before with Matt Smith's doctor, so I liked this touch. And one of the interesting things is that it would appear as the other doctors to their companions, and it aged them up. And there was a point where Tegan says, you look old. And he goes, well, so do you. And that was interesting, getting to see him go, it's like, you just leave and you don't care about us anymore. And having the Fifth Doctor go, remember, Adric, you know I care. You know I care so much. And resolving that, getting to see Ace say professor and talk with the Seventh Doctor was really touching. Like, they had such good chemistry, such good moments. Really great. On the note of these two people, when they first meet the 13th Doctor, it's funny, Kate has briefed them ahead of time that it's going to be a woman. She's prepared them for this concept. But then they see her, and, they're now old. And, of course, Jodie Whittaker's young. And they go, well, you said she'd be a woman, but you didn't say she'd be young. Because their doctors were not young. They were older gentlemen. So the idea that she's both a woman and young, like, they're more offended that the Doctor is more young and vibrant than they are. Then they have a problem with it being a woman. I thought that was a funny way to do it. This is the kind of humor that Doctor Who needed to have a woman, to have this playfulness with the nature. Not beating your head over it with people having a problem that she's a woman, but just having the constant, wait, her? Type stuff. And there'll be a moment like that later. But I just, every scene Ace was in, I really loved. And I have only watched an episode or two of the Seventh Doctor era. It's on my bucket list to do. I heard so much bad stuff about the Sixth Doctor that I kind of stopped there and haven't been willing to push myself through. Watched an episode of him, watched an episode of 8, but I've watched a ton of clips from like Doctor Who YouTube of 8 and Ace. And so I am looking forward to that. But I love the energy she brings to it. And like, she totally, from the clips I've seen, like, she just embodied that character. And she's, a woman in her, 50s now. And she's got the baseball bat and the jacket and the nitro. And she's ready to go. And I loved Graham, which was the only one of the TARDIS crew that I liked. I haven't liked Dan. I definitely don't like Ryan. And Yaz was somebody that I started out liking and then really grew to dislike. The writing for Yaz has been awful. It's been purely awful. She started out as a unique character. But there's a moment when Graham and Ace meet each other. And Graham's like, oh, so there's these aliens here and I got to stop them. And, and she's like, yeah, I got a bat and explosives. Let's go do it. Like, and he's like, oh, no. But see, there's this thing. I travel with the Doctor. Oh, you know the Doctor too. He's like, other people knew the Doctor? Like he's totally oblivious that he isn't like the first person to travel with the Doctor. Which was kind of interesting. And then he's like, yeah, but I kind of didn't want to die. He's, no. Just we blow stuff up and we hit him with the bat. Like, it works. She's like, he's a much more timid companion compared to her. And so they had kind of some interesting moments. The Master loses. The Master doing stuff like playing with the Second Doctor's recorder, doing kind of stuff like that was really, and he's really unhinged. So I do like his performance. The dance number thing was a little bit, and his whole plan is bonkers, doesn't make sense at all. But I do like his performance. Um, then the whole thing after that, um, Goodwin. Uh, what I was trying to remember. Uh, not Goodwin. Osgood. Osgood. Osgood is the unit character that should have been in this is Osgood. That was going to kill me, and I was going to be so mad if I didn't remember it before the end. I ramble. I ramble. And I talk with my hands. It's a very Matt Smith type doctor thing. But it's just something I do. So, what next? I don't want to miss anything. Um, we've been talking about some of the positives. I talked about the negative of the master doing like that. But then when like the master's plan falls apart, it just doesn't. It's I don't know. It's unsatisfying. And then we get the Dr. Yaz stuff. And she's just like, oh, I'm going to have to regenerate now. And she's like, it kind of did like David Tennant did a thing where he was going to go on a tour, but he didn't have the fatal wound yet. But Peter Capaldi did a thing where he like forced himself not to do it for a while. And Jodie's doing that, but instead of like being on some epic adventure or something, Jodie goes and has ice cream with Yaz on top of the TARDIS, staring down at Earth. And then she tells her, I got to do this next part on my own. Bye-bye. I know you have this little infatuation with you, but I'm about to be a man again. And bye-bye. You're gone. I don't want you in my next life. It was very awkward. Very like, we're going to try to make this touching and romantic, but not romantic because we want all the points for having Doctor and Yaz relationship, but we don't ever want to commit to it. We want to make it be like this forbidden thing, but that so that we're progressive, but we're not actually progressive. This idea of toying around with that, it really makes for lame storytelling. It just they really just kind of like Martha, but they took a character that had interest. She was a police officer. She's going out to be with the Doctor, and then like they just like demolished her character into maybe she's in love with the Doctor, but she can't tell the Doctor, and then she does tell the Doctor, and the Doctor says, yeah, but I'm not into being in love with humans anymore. But if I was, I would be with you, but I'm not. It's not you, it's me. And then they went on and said, well, we're still going to be friends, and I'm just going to always be looking at you longingly and concerned for your well-being, but we're never going to talk about it. Is a very lame character. It's just a lame character archetype. Just like when they made Martha obsessed with the Doctor getting over Rose and falling in love with her, and the Doctor had no interest, it destroyed her character. She started out such a cool character, so strong-willed, so well written, and then it devolved into that, and it was just like, it was a relief when they got rid of her off the show, because not because her character was bad, but because they had turned her character into this lame stereotype of just woman needs to be. So yeah, for all the progressive supposedly of female crew on the TARDIS and all that, female Doctor, all this, Yaz is a very bad representation of a female character who is one note and just there to pine over our hero. Very lame, very non-progressive in my opinion, for all the things that they told about that. And normally, I'm not out here demanding, oh, they got to do this, they got to do this. But when they are out there touting it, putting out YouTube videos where they're going, this is why this is great, because we are progressive. We have finally had a person of this nationality. We finally had somebody of this gender. Rah, rah, rah. And then they do this. Something so unprogressive, something so backwards, so, you know, classic Who did the companions so much better, that it really stings, because they put it in your face so much. You know, that's something I loved about classic sci-fi, and people are critical now because they are products of their time. But you look at like the sci-fi of the 60s, and you compare that to a lot of what the 60s were actually like, and they were 10 to 20 years ahead of their time. But yeah, you can go in 2020 and you can go in Star Trek, the skirts were too short. In Doctor Who, the Doctor was, you know, saying, well, maybe you women should stay back and let us men take it because it looks dangerous. Or they had the one episode that, instead of getting an actual Chinese actor, they did yellow face. This is at a time when it's being done low budget in England. There wasn't like there was a lot of Chinese actors doing, and this wasn't something that people freaked out about at the time. Was it right? No, but it doesn't suddenly make that episode problematic or bad. No, it's a product of its time. And, you know, by and large, that stuff was way more progressive, of having people of color, people of genders, nationalities, stuff like that in Doctor Who from the get-go. And so and they were able to do it and just be part of Doctor Who. They didn't have to have somebody constantly telling you, look, Doctor Who is progressive now. Doctor Who has us. So when they do that, and then they do something that is backwards, that is anti, as the term is, progressive, it's just, it stings. Really, they've made you raw, and then they do that, and it chafes. But then we have the epic moment where the Doctor turns into David Tennant. Everyone was like, "Oh man, who's he gonna? Is it gonna be Newt Gunray? Is it gonna be David Tennant? Who's the Doctor gonna turn into that is gonna have to wear Jodie Whittaker's outfit? You know, be dressed in female clothes?" And they did the thing where it regenerated the clothes too, and it went into David Tennant specifically doing it as like this idea that the stuff that the Master did to the Doctor, that has messed up this regeneration. So she reverted back to a previous one. He's like, I recognize those teeth. What? And we're going to get, I thought it was just one, but it looks like this next year we're going to have 3 specials. And David Tennant's going to be in it. Matt Smith might also be in it. So maybe he's going to be switching around. But Newt Gunray is going to be in it, which is the next Doctor. So is it going to be him while he's in this also running into who he's going to be next? Or is he going to be like changing back and forth? Which could be cool and would be a good way for people to fall in love with this new Doctor, which is going to be the, well, it's not going to be the first Black Doctor because Jo Martin was in it, which was the first female Black Doctor, but the first male Black Doctor. You know, I'll qualify all this stuff, which I have no problem with. I want to make that clear. I do not have problems. The Doctor is an alien from another planet. He doesn't see any of us as his race. He seems to identify with the UK because this is a BBC show. But when you look at the UK now, if he was a Mexican, I think it'd feel a little off. Because guess what? There's not a ton of Mexicans in England. I'm not saying there's not, because Mexicans everywhere. Okay, but it would feel less sitting. But there are a ton of Black people in England, and you know what? There's a ton of East Indians. So if it was an East Indian Doctor, I probably would have been okay with it. Um, Anything that was part of a England province or something like that. But if it was a Chinese doctor, it would feel a little off. There's certain there's certain things that a Native American doctor feel a little off. That's not like a big thing in England. Like he needs to be English. Like that's a big thing. This needs to be somebody who's English, has an English accent. Um, so uh, a black doctor makes sense. The doctor at some point would do that because I don't think he's specifically. I identify as a white person. The male thing's a little different. I think that is because there is a gender a role there. It's kind of like biblically, angels don't have gender, but they only appear as men in the Bible. There's a reason for that, and it is not to belittle women in any way. It's just that the doctor specifically wants to be the person that takes charge and leads the group. And at least in Earth culture up to this point, that has typically been the role of a male. And we saw that with Jodie. Like, there were times when people didn't want to follow her. So it makes sense that the doctor would typically want to identify in this role. It's the same reason why, while he's not looking for romance, he's got a lot of young ladies traveling around with him because he wants that power dynamic, so to speak. He wants to be the person in charge. Now, you could say there's some things with, if he's going to the South as a black doctor, that's not going to work if he's going to Civil War era South. But, through the majority of throughout time, especially when you're dealing with England, that's not going to be a problem for him. So, it's just, I don't have a problem with it. But people are raw, as I just mentioned. The whole Chibnall era has destroyed canon. It's done, anti-service to New Who. It has been very much about agenda, sci-fi story, not even second, more like third or fourth thought. So people are raw. People are upset. They are not happy with Doctor Who right now. So changing the color now of the Doctor, there's going to be a lot of people who are already so ready off the show that this is going to keep them away. I think had the Chibnall era not happened, I think most of those people who aren't going to give this Doctor a fair shake would have given the Doctor, Newt Gunway, a fair shake prior to Chibnall's era. Russell T Davies knows how to write Doctor Who. He has a love for Doctor Who. Yes, he's very much, as they say, woke. I hate that word. But he knows how to weave that into a story. Now, will he do things differently than he did before? Of course he could. Very much could. But people point to, he's saying this in interviews and that in interviews. Guess what? He said all that stuff before. You just weren't paying attention back then because you weren't ready to be upset. It's interesting. I'm looking forward to what's coming next. But I think the idea of 3 episodes where they're going back and forth between the two is going to really ingratiate us into that character. But we see Doctor and Donna and stuff. How much will he be in it? Was that trailer for all 3 or just one of the specials? Don't know. And I'm excited. I'm actually excited for Doctor Who. Some more negatives about this Power of the Doctor. They danced around the Timeless Child. So you have the Time Lord Cyberman, which is directly from that story of the Timeless Child. So, yeah. And the Master and how he was involved in that. So you have that. And then you have a moment when the hologram appears as Joe Martin. Just to confuse the Cybermen and Daleks and the Master, but for no really other purpose. Once again, reminding you, hey, we've identified that before the Doctor was an old white guy, he was a black woman. It's just bringing up all the timeless child stuff is there without saying it. We're not going to say it because we know that turns people off, but we're gonna put it there. We're gonna dangle it in front of you and go, timeless child, timeless child. Uh, it just it was really grating. I was finally starting to enjoy a little bit of a Jodie episode and being like, you know what, this is the story's a bit wonky, but like I'm just loving the fan service, the classic Who fan service. And then it was like timeless child, which is an affront to classic Who. to to have a recast of William Hartnell be an episode where they basically throw out the canon of William Hartnell with Joe Martin, to have them that last thing, we've got to talk about this. This is the big thing. So Graham, now that he's learned that he's done that, oh wait, before we do this, one other gripe. Ravinder, who was in the Flux as a companion, who's from the future, he flies in a spaceship to the past to help. He doesn't do anything, and the Doctor has to take your time out to fix his ship and then send him home. He adds nothing to the plot other than he's a character that we created. We got rid of him before this episode, but wouldn't it be good to have him back? Because we want all of Jodie's, except for Ryan, who the actor who played that, like, he's totally checked out. He doesn't care about Doctor Who. Like, you see him in every interview he had to do. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. And that was his performance. Like, he was totally checked out during the show, which is why I did not like his character. It was a total of not caring. He did not come back for this. But Graham and Dan and Yaz and Ravinder all did. So that little rant. Okay, at the end, Graham is doing a little group, which is very reminiscent of what we saw in the Sarah Jane Adventures, that she had some previous companions that she was meeting up, people like Joe Grant, that she was having contact with these other companions. And so Graham, now that he knows he's got here, and who does he got? We have, of course, Ace and Tegan, who we've been seeing through, but we have the actor who played Ian Chesterton, one of the first people to ever walk into the TARDIS in the first episode of Doctor Who. One of my all-time favorite companions. This guy's in his 90s. And he came back to live-action Doctor. And, of course, they got to do... Now, did you say she? But one of the funny things is, he recently got back into Doctor Who. He was contacted. He did some Big Finish just recently in this, and he actually was unaware. He knew of the second Doctor, that he had taken over when William Hartnell got too old to do the performance anymore, and they left the show. He knew that the second Doctor happened, but he actually was under the impression that the show fizzled out after that. He didn't know that 60 years later the show was still going, and that was quite a shock to him. And so he did some Big Finish stuff, and now he did this little cameo. And it's funny that in his 90s, like, it's always funny when, like, actors aren't into sci-fi or into the stuff they're in. Like, he's totally, Doctor Who is great, but, like, Doctor Who to him is that, and, like, this whole, like, action stuff, like, that's not Doctor Who to him. Like, it's a completely different show in his eyes. So, but it was, having him there was so touching, so special to see him there. Joe Grant. I was never a huge Joe Grant fan back when I was going through those, but she has grown on me, and her Twitter is just so wholesome. So wholesome. I love this actress. So seeing her there was good. Melanie Bush was there. Kate Stewart. Of course, Graham, Dan, and Yaz are all there, this companions. Why wasn't Martha there? Why wasn't Martha and Mickey there? Me could have been there. why wasn't, you know, Captain Jack there? He appeared in the 12th Doctor. He should have been there. You know why? Because they've canceled him. Over what I think is a silly reason to cancel somebody for something that was already paid recompense for and already apologized for years ago, but we're going to bring it up now. And it's something that, in my opinion, Russell T. Davis and Chris Chibnall, who wrote the episodes that had him undressed and had him walking around the set all day in a bathrobe, preparing for nude scenes, that caused him to flash people who were not part of the acting crew for that, makeup artists, different people in the office complex and stuff. Was it an intasteful joke? Yes, but when he's on set and he's required to be totally naked under a bathrobe all day, and the directors and stuff are making cheeky comments about him and stuff like that, and he's a young actor, was it a stupid thing? Was it a bad thing to do? Yes. I don't think he should have done it at all. Is it something that decades later in his career he should be now being penalized for and canceled for because of this? No, I do not. I know that he said some stuff that upset people because he was ready to cancel Noel Clarke, who's another person who I think, I'll hold my judgment there because I don't know. I honestly don't know. There's a lot of evidence that's come out that says he might not be guilty, and there's a lot of stuff that has said that he's probably guilty. I think that's something that I personally will never know. But if he's getting jobs, and if the court isn't finding him, then I'm going to assume that he's probably not guilty, and I'm going to separate the artist from the work. And if people are willing to work with him and say good things about him, then I'm going to take that at face value of how he is now. But I don't think people should be canceled for things that they did over a decade ago. We're constantly different, and what's the point of ever improving yourself if you will always be held accountable for something you did in the past? Especially when it isn't something that was life or death. Something that would get you a prison sentence longer than that. Like if it's not a crime that would get you sent to prison for over 10 years, why are we canceling the person 10 years later? Just my thought. But beautiful to see these companions here. Lots of classic companions. Clip this out, watch it on YouTube over and over. I don't think I want to watch the whole thing, but these are the moments I want. The doctors that we saw come back, the classic companions that we saw back. These were your Black Chrysanthemum. These were your Cad Bane and your Luke Skywalker and Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. That's what these were. These were all the flashy characters that got you hot. Like, oh my goodness, it's that. Oh my goodness, it's the second Doctor's recorder. Oh my god. Sorry. Recording multiple videos back to back, my voice is starting to go, but at the end of the day, the story was not good. The Daleks didn't even seem like they had a purpose there. The Cybermen did, and the Master did, but the Daleks were like a third wheel. The plot didn't make sense. The Master's plan didn't make sense. There were bad character moments between the current actors. Wildly varying special effects. Some really cringy moments when the Master danced. That reminded me of the what's his name, the David Tennant's Master. Cringy as could be. It's not a good episode. It's 2 hours. It wasn't good. But there were so many moments like, oh. And you know what? It was a little refreshing because that has been, other than the stuff they did with the Sontarans, this run of Doctor Who has been some of the, either they show up and they show the Daleks and they do them completely dirty, wrong in their characterization of the Daleks and the Cybermen, or they just have no classic things. Uh, yeah, all in all, is a very mixed bag. It's definitely for fans worth a watch, I would say, just for the nostalgia, the different things. But it also could be something that you just peruse YouTube and see all the highlights. Um, yeah, it's this is as good as Jodie's era gets. No offense to Jodie, but this is as good as her era gets. Probably like Skyfall, the Tesla episode, the Kablam episode from the first season. Those are probably the best. I'm going to be doing breakdowns of each one. I'll do better notes, but than this, so I won't be so spastic. But that's my thoughts. Power of the Doctor. Now it had moments. Seeing Anderson Chesterton, seeing the classic Doctors back. Ace swinging her bat at a Dalek. There were moments, but overall, down. But I'm kinder to this because of all the classic actors and stuff like that. I am definitely less critical of this, but I just wish it was better. I wish for their sake it was better. Um, and I'm interested to see what Russell T Davies has coming next. I am allowing myself to get hyped. I could be totally prepping myself for a letdown, but I'm letting myself get hyped. All right, with that, I gotta get to bed. It's like 1:30 in the morning. Uh, let me know what you thought of it. If you watched it, have you watched any of Jodie's era? Have you given up hope on it? What are your thoughts about the state of Doctor Who? And who would you like to see come back? Let me know down in the comment section below.